Welcome aboard. Yes, Roland 95 here. Tulino musajja Kagayi kozesa ku microphone. we
Njagezaako.
have man, we have a playwright. He's a spoken word artist. He's traveled. He's seen a lot of stages. A lot of stages have embraced him as well. I think he's a man that is one of those people that I know that are so passionate about spoken words. Uh, I cannot profile you in just one sitting because you've been around the spoken word circles, you've done poetry, you're a playwright, as I mentioned, done a lot of editing. I don't know how many people give you credit for that, but we shall discuss that later on. But I would love you to introduce yourself to the people viewing us and the people on Home FM as well.
Thank you so much. Our viewers,
Mm.
hello. My name is Kagayi Ngobi, a poet, a playwright, a performer, and a publisher. And I'm happy to be here.
Don't forget to mention Chitara.
Oh, yes, from Chitara
Bravo,
Nation
where
to
have you done,
Poetry
Brad?
Viewers. And I just really need to Jikola.
Mm.
Yeah.
Man, you've been around the poetry circles for a long time. I love to say spoken word
Mm.
because usually when you say poetry, people think abantu tebatutwala nnyo serious. Eh?
Tuba mu
Tuba,
classroom.
tuba, I have my cousins. When I talk about poetry,
Mm.
they say it's a high end kind of thing.
Yeah.
They don't even want to associate with it.
Mm.
So when you say spoken word, in most cases, people relate with, you putting down words and maybe going on stage and performing them.
Yes.
But you're one of those people that have done a lot when it comes to spoken word. You've been on different stages that I already mentioned. I'm not going to break them down. I want to know what inspired you to start, the spoken word and all that.
Um,
Inspiration, Yavawa. When did you
inspiration.
even start? Do you realize that you can do spoken word?
Inspiration came from a poetry show I attended actually. I had I was passionate about literature and poetry, but I was not a writer, I was not a performer.
Mm,
I was a good literature student.
mm,
Yeah, and then one day my friend invited me to a poetry show. They
yeah,
used to belong to a poetry group called the Lantern Meet of Poets.
yeah.
Nga bategese show ku National Theatre. Baaziyitanga recital. N'ekigambo sikiwuliranga
How
naawe.
many years ago?
That was 16 years ago, 2009.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in third year. Makerere nga njagala kuba
Kagaye,
lawyer.
Kagaye, emyaka nga.
Mutulaba kunyirira naye.
Yeah.
Tuvudde wala.
So you get on stage and
No, I didn't get on stage. I just walked into the show and I was surprised, first and foremost, Yaliku National Theatre, the auditorium was full. I was like, wow, so many people love poetry. And then the poetry that they presented was so Ugandan. I was used to Shakespeare poetry. Oli omukadde,
yeah.
w'Abangereza oyo,
Mm,
American poetry oyo omukadde.
mm,
So I was surprised to see fellow Ugandans, age
mm,
mates. In fact, some of them were course mates. Nga mbamanyi ku campus tukiringa ffenna
yeah.
naye nga poetry
But they're doing spoken word.
nga bakola spoken word naye privately, like it's
Yeah.
not something that they were doing in our faces.
Mm,
So I realized that it was a cool thing. What drew me closely to it was I'm passionate about speaking up for human rights.
yeah. Yeah.
Era kyekyantwala okubeera lawyer.
Mm,
So when I was at the National Theatre that day, I realized that hey, I don't have to be a lawyer to
for you
speak
to
for
speak for people, yeah.
to speak for people. I can be a poet, and I don't
Degree
need
or
a degree.
Jimara. Hey,
I don't need a degree to do this thing. I just need
the
my
degree
talent.
stopped there.
No, I didn't.
Eh,
I got the degree.
yeah.
Actually,
For the parents that really want.
no,
Mm,
I was passionate about this law thing. I
yeah.
wanted it. Because I wanted to do that thing of speaking for people and
Yeah.
what.
Yeah.
But I realized poetry was the other way that I had to do without
Mm,
paying tuition, without having to go for lectures.
mm,
And I felt like I had the talent in me. So nemba joining. Naye namala okusoma nakola degree yange.
mm.
I only dropped out of LDC and then I also dropped the entire legal career
Yeah.
when for me the question I asked myself was, kale, oyagala kubeera lawyer akola poetry, or you really want to
You
be a
just want to be
successful poet?
yeah.
Nga, like you become that poet. Everybody knows that Kagayi tumumanyi kocha poetry.
Mm.
So I embraced the challenge
Yeah.
of being a
So you
poet.
decide to take that direction
Yeah,
and become a poet.
yeah.
I always wanted to know, by the way,
Mm.
how do you even decide to say I'm dropping my profession, I'm going to do poetry? We're in a third world country.
Mm.
Most people, even up to now, have not yet embraced poetry.
Yeah.
They don't understand what spoken word is. Before we started, I mentioned to you that when you have a discussion with some people, they tell you that's a high end kind of thing.
Yeah.
Some people don't even want to associate with it.
Mm.
I have a story that I will tell you later on about somebody who has a certain perspective on spoken word.
Mm.
But what drives you to decide that, you know, I can stop doing law and then focus on poetry?
Um, I believed in myself. I
Mm,
believed in my talent. I was a late bloomer. I started writing when I was in third year,
mm,
but I was encouraged by my friends and the audiences I used to perform for. Nga bagamba, "Man, Kage, ekintu ky'okola kirungi nnyo."
yeah.
Um, I sort of had I was myself on stage actually. I was myself on stage, and I believed in myself. I believed I was good
Yeah.
enough
Mm,
to be a poet.
yeah.
Despite what everyone else was telling me, despite not having in direct or immediate role models to look up to,
Mm,
nze nekkiririzaamu
yeah.
nga nze.
Like I can do this.
I was like, I can do this. I can do this. And that was the first reason. The second reason was I grew to hate the law.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I grew to hate it. Now, where I am,
Is it?
I
Is it?
think that I didn't have to drop out actually. I
Yeah.
could have ended. I could have finished
Mm,
and then still do the poetry.
yeah.
But I grew to hate the poetry. I hated the fact that mwana abaana baali bakopa nga abasomesa bababbira max kitegeera
Ekyo
nga
nga kyakuluma nnyo.
nedakyanuma because I realized that it was if you're studying the
It
law,
was never about
the
how
law
bright
is
you were.
supposed to be the equalizer
Yeah, yeah.
for the rich, for the
Yeah.
poor,
But
for
it
the
was
tall, for
being
the short.
broken in the
But it was
classroom.
being broken in the classroom.
Yeah.
Ekyokubiri bwe nali ku LDC mwana ng'abaana bazannya obukodyo okuwangula emisango,
Mm.
and I was like, man, if this is just at LDC, if this is just happening at law school, then how is it
Yeah.
in the real world?
Mm.
And I asked myself the question, do I have to become a liar? Do I have to become
It was.
sly?
Yeah.
Do I have to become deceitful? Do I have to be a person who always have wenzire waka, I have to hide information? Do I have to treat everybody with suspicion?
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, I don't want to be that kind of person. Yeah. The person I want to be an honest person. I want to speak for people. I want to speak truth to power. And for me, poetry was the
Yeah.
thing where I felt I had the 100% freedom
Yeah, yeah.
to do that.
Mm.
You know, I was the master of my conscience.
Yeah.
You know, and I was not being driven by money. I
Mm.
was not being driven by winning a case.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you talk about not being driven by money,
Mm.
you know, you're going to confuse people.
I know.
You're going to confuse people
Mm.
because I want to think that everyone who does something, the end goal in most cases has to be banking something in your account. And you drop a profession that's low, take on poetry, something you hadn't fully figured out,
Mm.
but you probably had hope that it was going to lead you somewhere.
Mm.
So you take on poetry, and now all of a sudden you're telling us that it was never about money. For
Mm.
someone watching, they need to understand, when does it become about money? Because you can't, you have to survive. I mean, you have to dress up, you have to pay rent, people have kids, they have families, they have to look after families.
That's
So
true.
you drop your profession, parents had paid money. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
you decide to take on poetry because in
Mm.
African setting usually that's madness.
Yeah. It was,
How do you
yeah.
drop your profession and you go for
For
poetry?
ebintu
So we want to
by'abazungu ebyo.
understand.
No, for me, it was never about money. And up to now,
Mm,
it's not about money. What people need to understand is that when you focus on excellence, money follows you.
mm,
You don't even know where the money comes from. That is true. I didn't
mm.
want to sell my soul.
Yeah.
I still wanted to be the poet who speaks truth to power. I
Okay.
wanted to be the poet who does not sell my conscience,
Yeah.
to capitalism. And by the grace of God, I've managed to do that. I've
Mm,
managed to tell my stories my
mm.
way,
Yeah.
but excellently.
Yeah. Using
I
spoken
really
word.
focus. I really focus on excellence. So
Mm,
I invested a lot of time
yeah.
in understanding how to become excellent at my craft.
Yeah.
And yes, I could, and I took up every opportunity I was given
Mm.
to showcase my talent, whether I was being paid
Or
or
not.
not.
The most challenging part about art is people usually fall out with the organizers, maybe the people that host these events,
Yeah.
because of the money.
Mm, mm.
And for you, it was never about money. But there's someone out there who is, wondering, why would you even go to school, waste all those years? Because clearly your parents were paying money.
No, you have to.
Well, I
I
don't know who
understand, man.
was
I
paying
do.
money for you,
No,
but
no, my parents
yeah.
were paying money, and they
Mm,
were disappointed when I did that decision, and they were
mm,
disappointed for quite some time.
yeah,
But I also understood that I had to live up to their expectations.
yeah.
But my expectations were higher
We're higher.
than their own expectations of me.
Yeah,
Watch it again.
yeah,
And then the other thing is, man, there is money in everything.
yeah, true.
Eri abakola sente mu B, human feces. Eri abakola sente mu busa,
Yeah,
in cow dung, in
yeah,
chicken dung. There are people who make money in. There are people making money in air.
yeah.
So there is money
In
in
everything.
everything. But the point is not just about money. The
Yeah.
point is, what service are you offering to society? Then society finds value
Finds
in what
value
you
in
do.
what you do.
Kati kojja kubeera ogamba nze njagala bampe sente. I think most poets ask the wrong questions about money.
Okay, I was coming to that. There are people who actually they don't even perform on stages. Wanamuntu abeereyo nga for them they are just writing their work. They are not even giving it 100%. But he comes and he expects to get a certain amount of money.
Yeah,
They have performed for how many? Two, three times.
yeah,
And he expects to get the same amount as someone like Kagayi who has been in the industry for over 10 years.
mm,
I want to understand, how do you maneuver that? Because the mindset these days is, I want to get money as soon as possible.
yeah. It's the same mindset everywhere in Uganda. You have to understand, poets are not any different from all the other people.
Mm,
Uganda yafuukansi ya
yeah.
deal ekwatiddewa.
Mm,
And it's the same mindset that has come into the poetry space.
yeah.
Um, for me, what I would tell that poet is, rather than focusing on who is giving me money,
Mm.
ask yourself a question: who is giving me business?
that's that's
Yeah.
that's that's a good one.
So, have you worked on yourself to be a business?
That's-
Have you written poetry that is business?
yeah.
Ngo oli bw'agiraba agamba, I want to use your content
Mm,
to market my product. So I want
mm.
to use your content to, to popularize
To
my
popularize
social
my
cause,
brand, yeah.
to popularize my brand.
Yeah.
And I keep telling poets who demand from
Mm.
poetry curators and producers money nti, tosaba muntu ssente nga gwe tosobola kuzeesasula.
Yeah, you can't.
Tosaba muntu ssente nga gwe tosobola zisasula muntu mulala. Banyiigire ddala. Gwe tosobola kujja kunoga mbunze mpa akakadde kamu.
Yeah.
Nga gwe oba okoze show yo tosobola kampa.
Yeah, you can't even raise that.
You can't
much.
even raise it
Yeah.
yourself to pay another person.
Yeah.
Toli wa kitalo nga gwe bw'olowooza. Toli wa kitalo.
Well, guys, if you're joining us right now, we are with Kagayi Ngobi. This is a spoken word artist. He's done a lot. And why we're sharing with him is because he's been around the poetry and spoken word circles. Actually, you've been around many creatives, not necessarily poetry. You've been around actors, musicians, so
Yeah.
you know everything to do with art. And I think someone watching now can pick something from this conversation. But of course, I wanted to know what has been the most challenging event in your life, in your how many years around spoken word. before we still go on and attack those,
Okay. No, for me, the challenge, I'm not attacking. I'm
Mm.
going to say it's the truth,
Yeah,
man.
better. It's the
It's the
honest
truth.
truth.
It's the
Yeah,
truth. It's the truth.
and people usually take offense from these things,
That
but
is okay.
people abasebagala mazima in most cases they find it hard to take the truth. Abederinga, you go back in your bedroom and you're like, okay, I'm not doing this right. This guy has spoken about it, but I feel like he's attacking me.
ezalawo lingi kubanga
Mm.
balaba kati Kagayi byakola nze naamusinga.
Yeah.
Ate
Mm.
oyinza okuba ng'omusinga nga kyo kituufu ng'olina content yali better.
Mm.
But
But what have
buli
you
omu alina
done? What
olugendo
have you
lwe.
done to
Everybody has a
Mm.
has a path that they pave for themselves.
Mm.
I actually don't think that the best poets are the ones who eventually become the most
The most
successful.
successful? True.
Yeah, the mindset of success is different from the mindset of production.
Mm.
Yeah,
So, what has been the most challenging in
for
the
me,
years that you've been around
for
Poetry Circle?
a few, but the biggest one I can talk about is doing things without God.
Mm.
Because when you do things with God, you become humble. There is a way you are humbled
Mm.
because you understand that it's not just about you. But
Okay.
twatandikire eyo.
People, I'm sorry for cutting you short. When you mention God, most people don't understand. I want you to highlight, to hint more on that because omuntu bwakulaba as a creative. Actually, most people think creatives don't even know who God is. Osegera. Like you are writing all these things, the performances that you're having around you, and the first thing you tell me is doing things without God.
Yeah.
Abantu abamu tebakitegeera.
Yeah, era tebakitegeera. Uh, ate omanyi katonda bw'aba takusembeza tojja mutegeera. It's the
Mm.
grace of God for you to understand God. So I can only talk about my experience best. And I can say that what I realized is without God, I was proud,
Mm.
I was arrogant,
Yeah.
I was depressed, I
So in a
always
discipline.
nga sina emotional
Yeah.
discipline. Yeah. nga neematira nnyo ate n'ekirala nga like you feel all the pressure of the world, in whatever angle that it comes to you, and
Yeah.
you take it on your shoulders.
Mm.
It becomes a burden. I started doing drugs.
Ah.
Hey, mwana nga twanywa enjaga ggwe gatanse n'oginookyeza eno ey'obuwunga,
Mm.
and that was a
And,
way
and, and
that
you
was a
know,
way
this is a
of
lifestyle
releasing.
for many creatives.
Yeah. And I also felt it was okay.
And now first I want you to first complete your challenges and then we can discuss
Yeah.
further.
Yeah, so for me, the first one was doing things without God.
Yeah.
That was a big challenge. The
Mm.
second one was the lack of emotional support from my parents.
Mm. They
That's
didn't understand what you are
they
doing.
did not understand what we were doing, and most of us, our parents are our first role models.
Yeah.
So bwe bakujerega, ebintu bwe baba tebabitegeera, when they call you a disappointment,
If they are not understanding what you're doing, it
yeah, like,
becomes hard.
man, I used to have shows and I would fill up the space. I would fill up the National Theatre,
Mm.
and I would still go home and I feel empty.
Because they never appreciated
That
what you are
you
doing.
don't feel appreciated.
Yeah.
You don't feel seen. And you're invisible in their life. So that was a big challenge because it also drove me towards depression,
Yeah.
writing dark poetry,
Mm.
being angry at the state, being angry at everything in the world,
Mm.
and it creates a toxicity
Yeah.
because when you're angry, that you're sharing with your audience anger.
Mm.
When you're depressed, you're sharing, depression, and
I
it
think
also
art brings
affects how
out
you
what's
create.
inside. So
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
mm.
yeah. So for me, there's nature center nakyo kyali kikulu. When we were working out, there was no financial reward.
Yeah.
When we were doing stuff, most people didn't understand, at least from where we started, most people didn't understand what spoken word is, what
Yeah.
poetry is. We didn't even know how to charge.
Hey.
We didn't know how much we were worth.
Like somebody asks you what's your red card.
Yeah, what's your rate card? How much should I pay you?
The word red card wasn't in your vocabulary.
Signing a contract, I'd even sign a contract to how?
Yeah.
You know?
Mm.
And most of us didn't go to drama school or
Yeah.
performance art school. Try to get on street.
Yeah.
So those were some of the challenges that we faced.
Mm. Okay, so we are definitely gonna take a very short break. But Kagai, when we come back, you hinted on drugs, man. In the creative spaces, that's a discussion you cannot do away with, like everywhere. And I want us to pick it from there when we return shortly. But it's the Everything Talk with Roland 95. You can always check us out on YouTube. You can go and search for Roland 95, or you can search for 95 Live. You'll get this full interview here. We have a man that has been about the poetry circles for a long time, and now we finally have him here speaking about poetry, speaking about spoken word, the challenges in spoken word. And before we left, we were actually talking about drugs.
Yeah.
Omanyi, people don't usually talk about this topic of drugs, but I feel like creatives think somehow if I use drugs, it's going to boost my creativity.
Mm.
And I think it's misguided. It's an image the industry has painted for the whole performances and the performers and stuff. But I think it's something that people need to talk about more often.
Yeah.
And
True.
it's very brave of you to come and talk about it as well. There are very many people that have lost their creativity to drugs. People don't even realize that. But how did you overcome? How did you overcome? Once you joined and then.
God. It was God. I can assure you.
Mm,
It was not me. I surrendered. I tried to stop on my own.
yeah,
I could even go 3 months without using.
yeah,
But you're at some place, you've had a good show, you
yeah.
hang out with your
You're
buddies,
very
no gamba,
excited.
you're very excited, no gamba, why? Just
Didn't
one
you,
puff,
didn't you
puff,
have
puff,
didn't you have
pass.
to cut off some friends?
Now not really, not
Mm,
necessarily, not necessarily.
mm,
I could still hang out with them and whatnot. Even
mm,
right now, I could still hang out with them. For
eh?
me, it was not about cutting off friends. It
Mm,
was about giving myself to God.
okay.
Yeah, and the moment I did that, I had the I had the strength.
I think when you talk about God, it means discipline, finding your way to, disciplining yourself, having yourself in control, and understanding what you want, redirecting your purpose.
And other things.
Mm,
But yes, that too. But
mm,
God, God is more than that.
mm,
God is, when you realign yourself to the purpose that God has for you,
yeah.
and you are humble enough to allow
Mm,
God to use you.
yeah.
Bingi biterera nebyo byomanyi nebyotamanyi. Past, present, and future. You
Yeah.
are realigned in so many ways, and then
Mm,
also by submitting to God, there are definitely some habits you just draw.
you just drop.
Yeah.
It's very hard to overcome addiction. Usually, I was listening to some guy who was saying the best way of overcoming addiction is not even trying to be addicted. Because once you have started using, for most people, it's very hard to get back. They lose it completely.
However, we talk about addiction. We have to understand that people who get addicted are, are people who are unwell.
Mm,
These are people who are nursing childhood traumas.
mm.
So a lot of us, when you see people using drugs or smoking or getting addicted to social
Tosobola
media,
kitegeera.
olaba kyabukulu.
Hey.
But psychologists have shown that the reason why people like drinking or smoking is because it
Mm,
makes them feel safe. It gives them a safety that was denied to them when they were still young.
mm.
So even when you have friends who use,
Yeah.
don't judge them. Understand that what you're seeing there is basically a symptom. There is a bigger cause
There's a
behind
bigger
that.
problem.
There's a bigger problem. But
Yeah.
you're not helping matters. You're actually making them justify
Mm,
using it because the drugs make them feel at home.
mm.
Yeah.
Anyway, that discussion about drugs, it's not something we can exhaust, but it's in the industry and we can't run away from it, especially in the creative spaces. I want us to go back to spoken word.
Mm.
Kagayi Ngobi, you have performed on very many stages. For all the years that you've been around, which one is that one stage that you've been to and you're like, I think my purpose. I can finally see myself somewhere now.
It was the National Theatre stage.
Was that
Um,
your first show?
it was the first place where I performed,
Mm.
and I performed there for very many years. I can confidently say I am a child of the National Theatre.
It has
The
birthed you.
National Theatre stage birthed the poet in me. It was my word.
Yeah.
It was my word where I was birthed as a poet,
Mm.
and I respect it so much. Yeah,
That was like the biggest, the
you
one
know,
that you look at and you're like, yeah, this was it for me.
that is why that's why it all started for me.
Yeah.
That's why it all started for me. That's where I became the performer I am. That's where I became the writer I am.
Yeah.
That's where I became the critique I am. That's where I became the entrepreneur I am. For me,
Mm.
everything started at the Uganda National Theatre stage.
Mm.
Yeah. So everything else, Jonaina Janada,
Yeah.
my roots
Yeah.
were at the National Theatre.
Yeah. It was the one that established connections for you.
I mean, I call myself a theatre poet for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because some people find it hard to discover themselves,
Mm.
and for you to understand that I want to be this kind of poet. The National Theatre is the place I want to be, so it comes with drama first of all,
Mm.
which is something I think you have mastered with all the experience that you have in performing poetry. Most performers don't even understand what their strengths are. Otego oli ku stage nga tamanyi na watandikira.
Yeah.
Like some people don't understand that even to be a performer, you have to be with a certain personality. It's
Mm.
something you're representing, and I
Mm.
think it's something you have mastered. What is that one door that poetry has opened for you, and you think, if someone oli bw'aba alemeddeko ku kyayagala asobola like to get this that I've gotten out of spoken word.
Theatre.
Mm,
Soca, there are various ways of performing poetry. Which is spoken word, slam
mm,
poetry. The theatre poetry chankolera. And
mm,
poetry opened for me that door in theatre because theatre is a performance style that
yeah.
pays way higher
Mm,
than poetry spaces.
true.
So for me, when I poetry took me into that theatre space, drama space, that
Mm,
I started featuring at international festivals, and what made me unique was that I was doing theatre poetry.
mm.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
how many countries have you visited?
sikyazibala naawe sikyabala ngenda bugenzi.
Like, by the way, you see, we talk about these things, and there's a dreamer. There's someone
Mm.
out there who I would also love to visit different countries, but I'm not sure whether I can make it the way Kagayi Ngobi has made it. So, like, I'm asking you that question in a way that I want you to inspire someone, a dreamer out there who's just starting their poetry. There's a kid that is looking at you. I actually interact with a lot of people in the creative spaces, and there are very many people that look at, the work you've done and they appreciate that.
Bless the Lord.
Yeah. So there are very many countries you visited,
Omanyi,
all because of poetry.
yeah, all because of. But then here's the thing: the person who gave me my first tour in Europe
Mm.
found me performing at Ndere Center. Nali simumanyi, nali simulabangako.
Yeah.
She was a theater agent from Europe, and there was the Kampala International Theatre Festival that scouted me performing at the Uganda National Theatre.
Mm.
Watch together,
Yeah.
like emikisa gyonna gyonna ginsanze wano wendi. Watch together. So even
Yeah.
when these people came and they were telling me we are taking you abroad, oba bankolako research nze simanyi, but they saw my work. They made these offers to me. Nganchali ku stage, I'm sweating like in front
Yeah.
of people, and I didn't know them. Sibawuliranga nako ne bantwala, and then I get there, and then you do your thing, and then
Yeah.
some other person is like, "Yo, I want to work with you.
Mm.
Mpe number, yo, we shall keep in touch."
Mm.
Before you know it, you're being called for this project, for this festival,
Yeah.
for what not. But when I come back to Uganda, That's why you always see Kagayi when he's putting on these shows. It's at the National Theatre.
National Theatre.
Because me, I remember my route. I know what made me unique.
Yeah.
It was that signature performance. And there are so many other shows that I've done at the National Theatre that have ended up touring the world.
There's now I would say this. It might come out negative, but there's a lot of performers that really find it hard to work with you, simply because they think you are too strict. If that's the right word. I love to look at you as a principled man, especially when it comes to theater and performing on stage in the theatrical setting. Why don't you loosen up? Is it because of the respect you have for the craft? Is it because of the standards that you feel this craft should be at? What informed that personality?
I don't like mediocrity. A lot of us are comfortable settling for less.
Yeah.
A lot of us don't demand ourselves to be more. There's a movie I watched that had this statement that really stuck to my heart back in that day. This guy tells his daughter that you have to be twice as good as they are to achieve half of what they have.
What they have achieved, yeah.
So if you want to be a successful poet like George the poet in the UK,
Yeah.
or the other poets that you dream about,
Yeah.
remember you have to be twice as good to achieve half of what they have achieved. Naye kati osanga abantu abano basinga besaasira nnyo, like
You're holding back.
there's a lot of self-pity. And then also there is a lack of professionalism.
Yeah.
What people call being strict, being what? It's basic professionalism.
Yeah.
Abasinga
someone
kya poetry bo bakitwala nga kya passion, tebakiraba nga kya profession, and they keep wondering why emikisa gibayitako.
I think this is going to
kati ye bw'alaba Kagayi agamba nange Kagayi musinga oba ninga Kagayi nange bampeereza Kagayi.
Yeah.
Naye ate ne yeerabira nti it's not just about how you perform, it's about how you present yourself, what people know about you, how you talk to people, do you know your paperwork well. Kubanga kati bw'oba oli poet, honestly, nga totegeera contract law, nga totegeera copyright law, nga totegeera entrepreneurship, bintu bingi bigenda kuyitako. So yeah, that's the reason why.
That brings me to another discussion as well I wanted to have with you. I was having a conversation with a certain journalist, and I was we were going on about why poetry and spoken word is not growing. I feel like it's taking a lot of time for people to explode. There's only a few names that you can mention in the spaces, and this guy openly told me most poets are it's like a part-time thing. Like you will find a lawyer who's a poet for you, run away. You will find a teacher who is a poet. You find an accountant who is a poet. So most of them do poetry because of I think it's a leisure activity, if you may call it that. Do you think it's one of the reasons why these spaces have not grown as much?
I actually think these spaces have grown a lot. The problem is that we are comparing them with other art genres. Tulinga abazadde abalina omwana gw'olina ewaka naye ng'omukomparinga n'omwana wa neighbor. Okitegeera. Honestly speaking, there is a lot of growth.
Yeah.
Actually, there are so many good things about poetry that are not about the other industry.
Yeah.
Ekisooka, poetry has survived this long without structure.
Structure. Let's go.
Ekyokubiri, poetry has survived this long. Poetry has survived as a passion for a very long time. That means there is something good about it. Ekyokubiri, mulimu abayiseemu. Baana bangi nnyo. Like so many people have got so many. So many people have got so many good deals. They are making livelihoods out of this thing.
True.
Yeah. The other thing that I think poetry has mastered that other genres have not even equally mastered is poetry has captured the hearts of young people.
Yeah.
Banji.
Yeah.
You don't even know where they come from every year.
I think it's very hard for the young people to express themselves. So I think from performing poetry, it has I actually watch a lot of emerging poets these days.
Yes.
They have a lot of things to say, but they cannot say them. I mean, they cannot go to studio and sing. Parents will think, this one is lost.
Mm.
So the only way to express themselves is through spoken word.
Yes.
And you hint on something I want us to talk about the structure.
Mm.
We have had very many poetry organizations in this country.
Yeah.
Uh, and I feel like for us to understand, you also mentioned the copyright law and those things that follow, especially when the copyright law is in place. Many people will not understand them if there's no structure for us, to educate maybe the poets, maybe the people who are interested in doing poetry. But we've seen a lot of associations come up
Mm.
and fade away and wash
Yes.
away like
Yeah. Yeah.
sand
Mm.
on the
Mm.
lake.
Mm.
What is it that is not working? Why is the math not adding up, especially when it comes? I will talk about Poetry Association of Uganda.
Mm.
Why is it hard for people to unite for a cause that is as good as promoting this art?
Okay. I'll be honest with you.
Mm,
A lot of people that were in Poets Association of Uganda in PAO were not poets.
mm.
They were poetry lovers who wrote one, two, three poems and called themselves poets. Which together. And they had a lot of time to make noise rather than to do work. Goge mazima, goge mazima,
Hey,
you know. And so there was a lot of frustration. Actually, you'll notice this that PAO really the membership did not capture
mm,
the personalities who were actually practicing poetry professionally. It
mm.
did not appeal to the serious poets.
Yeah,
It appealed to
the wannabes.
non-serious poets.
Mm.
No, I don't know wannabes. We have choose non-serious poets. Abalina obudde bw'olugambo, abalina obudde nga bo basobola okumala obudde okunoonyereza
But I think the right
obugambo
word is
bw'abalala.
wannabes.
Yeah, you know. And so
Yeah,
when it
yeah.
died, for me, I was really not surprised,
Mm,
because like Chinua Achebe said, anger of a kinsman is felt in the flesh,
mm.
not in the bone.
Not in the bone. Yeah.
Nti ne bw'oba onyiigidde muganda wo togenda kwokya nnyumba ya waka.
Mm,
So there were a lot of people who were willing to let this thing burn up in
yeah.
flames.
Mm.
Because honestly speaking, this poetry thing was not theirs.
Wasn't.
Even nowadays they are real life right now and you ask, what are they doing? Takumbuulira oba bakola poetry.
Mm.
So yeah, but also the structure thing is I in East Africa, I think Uganda has the best structured spaces for poetry.
Really?
I think so.
Mm.
We have more platforms than any other country in East Africa.
Yeah.
We have more organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have radio shows.
Yeah.
We have podcasts about poetry. We have newspaper columns
Yeah. For
about
poetry.
poetry.
Yeah.
See how many people are publishing books for poetry. See how many poetry nights are starting up every left, right,
So
and
for you,
center.
that's growth.
That is a lot of growth,
Mm.
and actually a lot of structure.
Yeah.
Because they can't just come out of the blue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now the challenge has been professionalizing the structures, and
Mm.
now that is where a country like Kenya beats us.
So how do we then professionalize? Because man,
Let me tell you, for one reason, work with professionals.
mm.
Don't be a poet and think you can be an accountant. Also.
the
Don't be a poet
other
and
day,
think you can be an auditor.
the other day, someone was complaining about pay, and some other person jumped into the discussion, and I was like, if you didn't consult with your lawyer first before agreeing, then you
Mm,
shouldn't be complaining about pay. Because I think by the time you set a standard, you already have insight on the kind of person you want to sell out there.
mm, mm,
As a poet,
mm,
if someone maybe asked me what is his red card, like Kagayi, I want to have him on an event. Kagayi has set his standard, so maybe I will know he's within this range. But you're a performer and you don't even know how much am I going to ask for on an event. And someone just gives you transport and then you go on and complain.
mm.
So I think that's the professionalism we're talking about. Uh, an accountant will not understand to ask for this much. a teacher will not understand to ask for this much in the performing spaces. So I think we also need to educate people about that. I don't know who's going to do that job.
I think okay olaba ekintu ky'okusasula abatontomi I think it's two sides of the same coin. Really, there are poets who are really exploited. They are
True.
malicious poetry producers and curators.
Yeah.
Ng'afuna sente nyingi, abaana n'abawaka emitwalo esatu nga bamuwadde obukadde nga butaano. Gye bali.
Yeah.
Okitegeera.
Yeah, exploiting.
And then there are those ones who are really trying their best to get their spaces moving. So ajja kuwaayo ky'afunye. Olumu nga ye agenda na kutambula kudda waka by the way. Okitegeera.
Yeah.
Naye nga ye passion ye. So naye ate naye they suffer the brunt of the fire because of these other poets have been burnt by the malicious producers.
Yeah.
Naye ne bamutwaliramu nti oyo mubbi tasasula biki. So it's two sides of the same coin.
So I want to take you back to the discussion. You know, we on one of those spaces we talked about copyright, right?
Yeah.
I want to understand: do we have to be in a certain organization for us to benefit from the copyright law as poets, as performers? Do we need an association or something like that? Because I can see the other creatives, the musicians.
Yeah.
They are trying to work on that.
No. I'll be honest with you. We don't need those organizations. Let me tell you what you need. You need excellent work. If you have excellent work, everything will fall in order. Simple as that.
Kagayi, have you had people perform your work without your consent?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Without consent, I know people have made money.
That's
millions of money out
exactly
of my work.
What I'm trying to talk about.
I'm okay with it. I am okay with it. But nze Kagayi, nze tekinnuma. Era n'olumu nkubako ne mu ngalo ne ngamba that's good. If it's my poem.
I've impacted.
If it's my poem that's giving you, is putting food on your table, well and good. Nze sikinambuzibu. Ezange nnyina gye nzijja. You know, of course, I want to be credited. I want to do it, but you have to remember, man, it's not about money. Like I know I can talk about money and whatnot, but you have to remember, to me, Kagayi, it's not about money. It's not. It's never. It's for me. It's about what impact is your work having.
I know you have, because that's you. That's your personality. You probably don't care about. But there's someone out there who struggles. I have created my work. I'm sleeping on an empty stomach. But someone out there is performing my work and they are earning good money from it.
Why aren't you earning the good money?
That's a good question. But anyway, the point I'm trying to drive at is the copyright law is supposed to benefit the creative.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a big gap between the law and the creative. So how then do we maneuver this gap? Is it through organization? Is it through associations? Is it branding as a person? Because you can also brand and
politics to call it art. Keep writing your good poems. Keep investing in the experience. Keep investing in experiences that are going to make you a better writer.
Yeah.
Go for creative writing sessions. We are not politicians. We are not policymakers. We are artists. And I'm telling you this, when you create excellent work, those policymakers will come and they draft those things.
They want to look
at it. They are lawyers.
They actually
you can
use
hire category. You're not a lawyer. You are a poet. You're a spoken word poet. What business do you have to go and think that you can speak their common sense? Just do your art. And the thing is, if it's well and if it's attracting money, that's when everything will fall in place. Tumala ebiseera bingi mu ŋŋambo, tumala mu biseera bingi mu bintu ebiteetuzimba ng'abatontomi. Of course, I'm up for all you as a poet knowing your rights.
Yeah.
Your rights, your economic rights.
Yeah.
I'm big on that because I don't want you to be exploited.
Yeah.
But I also don't want you to lose focus on the real thing. The real thing is the gold in you that you have to keep mining.
Yeah.
And the gold is your talent.
Your creativity.
Focus on that. Buy books.
But
read.
do people still buy books?
Anti kati bye
Do people
mbagamba.
still read?
That's the thing I'm telling them, that they should buy
With
books, they should
with
watch shows, they should research about their craft.
I don't,
Focus on that.
we have
Politics to mwera.
the new wave of social media is, I think, washing away even the little time we had to buy books and read them. For most creatives.
Ate kati AI yazze.
Hey,
No go China ku chetu tebakyasoma kati AI ogiwa instructions empapo em about corruption in Uganda.
and it gives you.
Nogenda ku stage.
So
Nokuba line.
as I think we wrap this up, how are we overcoming that? We also talked about that, by the way. Artificial intelligence and social media, the pressure and the creativity. There are very many people who are writing for the sake of it, because there's a challenge going on. So I'm going to write about that, because is that even real art? Is that even sustainable? Is it something we can work with for the rest of our creative lives?
I have my own creative process that I respect.
Mm,
I am a poet who started by writing poems on paper.
mm.
And that's what I do. And for me,
Even up to
writing
now.
is therapy. Yeah, for me, writing started as therapy for me.
Mm.
You know, so for me to instruct AI to write for me a poem, nyizo kifunamu nga nimbya abantu nawandise poem
Yeah.
naye inside me mba seeyambye.
Yeah.
Okitegeera.
Yeah.
So for me that is why I write content. Kati abalagala okozesa AI, abagala okozesa what I'm big, by the way, I'm all up for embracing new techniques for
Yeah.
you to for you to increase productivity.
Yeah.
But for me, poetry was never about productivity. For me, poetry was like I told you, it's about speaking for the voiceless. It's about speaking truth to power. It's about speaking my own story for my own therapy to find myself. That's for me. That's what poetry does for me. Those are my foundations.
Actually, I have a message here. There's someone who's saying, Roller95 help me thank Kagayi for what he does, the way he does. There's a gentleman here who just sent a message
Oh, bless the Lord.
On our Home FM WhatsApp group. And we appreciate for those that are listening in and for those that are watching this one here as well. We do appreciate you so much. Kagayi, there's a lot that we can talk about, but we cannot exploit. We cannot exhaust everything in one sitting. Maybe something to close with is, how does someone remain consistent for that long? For the years that you've been around the industry, how does someone remain? There's a lot of factors, that can push you away. You talked about drugs. We put that out of the way. There's people want money. We can also put that out of the way. But the most important part is the creative mind. How does someone remain as creatively consistent for maybe 10, 15 years and they're still relevant?
I have a friend who used to have a poster on his back door.
Mm.
He was a fellow writer in the Lantern Meet of Poets.
Yeah.
And it used to say, writing is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration.
Writing is 1% inspiration and 99%
99% perspiration. Yeah. So the discipline to keep producing work,
Mm.
to keep challenging yourself to create new stuff.
Yeah.
The hunger for you to retain that, to never feel like you have arrived, to
Yeah.
never feel satisfied,
Mm.
to never feel like this is the biggest audience I've ever had. To know that you can always widen your boundaries of expression, that it can always get bigger, that you can always be better.
Yeah.
To invest in being coached.
Yeah.
You
Hey.
know, to invest, to invest in
It takes
reading
me
out.
back to something you mentioned earlier, that if you want to be as good as them, you need to work twice as
As
hard
hard to achieve half of what they
to
have.
achieve. How are we going to manage?
Anti kati bye mbagamba mwesaasira.
Yeah. I think we have a couple of more messages coming in as well. Let me try and see if we can read a few more. But basically, this discussion that we've been having is one that should open eyes for some people that have not had the experience that you have in the creative space, and maybe not spoken word. Any creative might want to use the knowledge that you have given us here. We have another long message. Will I be able to read this one? Somebody here says about Pau. I only think I don't really know how things changed. Well, they may think it was full of unserious poets, as he says, but I think it was kind of a role of groom from into better brands. I don't know if I've read this well, but I think it was kind of a role to groom them into better brands. Yeah, I think it was a room to accommodate those that think they made it and those that want to make it. No one becomes professionally a poet without investment.
Soko Komao.
Mm,
Kankubireko kino ekintu. This is a big problem that this person should know.
mm,
If you're not teachable,
and this is a
you can
creative
never
from
learn.
Zimbabwe.
No, you can. If you're not teachable,
Yeah,
you can never learn.
yeah.
A lot of young poets we have today are they have oak necks. They are so full of themselves. They have
Yeah,
they have no more room to learn.
yeah,
They have no more room to consult.
yeah,
You know, they arrive too soon,
yeah,
and that's the big one of the biggest problems that Pau had. It had so many young people
yeah.
who could have, some of them who could have taken their talents to other levels,
Mm.
but bali balowooza baatuuka. Yeah, they were unteachable.
I think as well, she actually hints on it here.
Mm.
I think it was meant to groom people, but some people didn't understand it. Maybe,
Anti kyekyo.
and you know when something is not understood, it loses purpose. So, but he she appreciates the delivery as well. The things that you talked about are things that people don't usually talk about, which is why as Home FM we are committed to this space, where we always have people that have been around the spaces like you, for example, to come and point these things out. You know, some people are shy; they don't even want to talk about them. Like you have an experience, but you can't share. Someone probably is going through the same thing. That's how we have people addicted to different things. That's how we have people demotivated. There's a lot of depression these days, and you can write. You can write. You can express yourself. Speak these things out, and people listen. I want you to encourage someone out there. Maybe not encourage them, but let them know that they can do what they are doing, and still make it out.
Yeah, I'm going to tell them to give your talent to God.
Mm,
Make God the center of your work.
mm,
You'll be surprised at how fast you will grow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, amazing. It's a good note to end with. Give your talent to God, but please don't just give your talent to God and sleep. Of course, you have to write. Just as you write, you also have to think about the networks that you know, the people you're associating with. The progress that you're looking for could be in those people, and maybe you're associating yourself with the wrong people. But we appreciate Mr. Man, this thing, Mr. Kagayi. We appreciate you
Thank you
for
for
coming
having me.
through. It's been me, Roller95. It is the Everything Talk. You can follow us on YouTube. You can go and subscribe right now. Check for Roland95, or you can type 95 live, and you'll be able to catch the full interview that we've had with the gentleman, Mr. Kagayi Ngobi. On the next episode, there's a lot more coming. But for those that have been listening in at Home FM 256, we appreciate it is a creative space. And we do love to put the creativity out there as we appreciate the people that have been around. We out.